Hey and welcome to the Creative Odyssey podcast, a podcast about entrepreneurship, creativity and personal growth by me, Emil Ruth. Thanks for listening and enjoy the show. Hello, I'm here with Florian Hoffmann. And Florian, how are you?
I'm pretty good. It's still not yet summer in Berlin. It's quite cold, but I'm looking over the houses on the rooftop and had a great morning. And it's nice to be with you, Emil.
Yeah, it's a definitely a good way to spend the morning, hopefully. So, Florian, how did you get here? So, who are you for the listener?
I'm an entrepreneur, author. I started with my wife, Catherine Kirschenmann, the Do about 12 years ago as a global platform to empower people to drive change in large businesses and to support young entrepreneurs all around the world. By now, the organization has grown a lot, is running the world's largest fellowship programs for young entrepreneurs in the green innovation and social innovation space with talents from over 100 countries participating in programs. And next to still running the organization with a campus in Berlin and Hong Kong and New York, I'm writing books. I wrote 2 books in German, 1 in English. And I'm active on boards and as an investor in a bunch of different places.
That sounds both very interesting and busy. There's a lot to do, as I hear, and then I'm very grateful and appreciative for you taking the time to be in a podcast like this. In exchange, I got your book over here, and I will read it and give a review soon. It is the German one, but I see the potential in maybe translating it one day. But let's just start with the programs you do with the fellowships. And I've seen the Mercedes one recently, and this was kind of familiar because I've seen someone who kind of starts who studies the same study course as I do, but in a different country. So she's from the Spanish, from Bilbao, the program, and it is called Leadership, Entrepreneurship, and like the international version. And she started the Be Visioneers Mercedes one, and then I kind of made the connection and was very intrigued. So, how are you involved in like setting the whole scholarship and fellowship situation?
So Be Visioneers is a program that the Do School Fellowships, which is our nonprofit organization, launched thanks to funding from Mercedes-Benz with the aim to build the world's largest support program for young eco-innovators from around the world. Mm-hmm. It's a 3-year program that we accept about 1,000 entrepreneurs into every year. We're active, I think, in about 70 different countries with local hubs by now. And the program is really for young people. That's why it's also cool to be on the podcast with you this morning, right? And hopefully reach out to lots of young people in Germany, in Europe, and beyond that have an idea, that want to start something, but that probably do it for the first time. And we saw that there's a massive gap because, you can study entrepreneurship or learn something about it in theory. And once you have your venture up and running, you can actually get funding and support from investors and banks. But there wasn't really a learning program that helped you to get going whilst you get going. Yeah. And that's really what Be Visioneers is all about. It's a global community. It's about learning how to be an entrepreneur by being an entrepreneur. And it's also a way to connect with mentors, with coaches, with employees from Mercedes-Benz, from other great companies that are actually giving their time to help the young entrepreneurs to really succeed. And so it's a huge privilege to build and run this world's largest program. Mm-hmm. It's amazing to see what the fellows, our Be Visioneers, are doing all around the world, innovating around green innovation and technology. And the application deadline is once a year. So if you're interested in out there listening to this, learning more about it, then check out the Visioneers website and see whether you're eligible and when the next deadline is coming up.
Yeah, that sounds great. And I didn't even realize that it's currently like the biggest program of this sort. And it's very, very astounding because I've just stumbled across on it on LinkedIn. And obviously, if you're in my position as a student starting out in entrepreneurship, everything that states grant or fellowship or scholarship and anything that gets you a bit of more financial headroom to get going is interesting. But besides that is definitely more the input that you're getting is way more valuable than any kind of financial support.
Yes, I'm in this space now for over 20 years of supporting great innovators through learning and leadership programming. And that's my experience as well. And, if you make it to become a Visioneers, you also have access to funding, to grants and investment. But most importantly, it's really about the know-how of how to get your venture off the ground, how to have a product market fit, how to engage with your customers or beneficiaries, and also how to do it in community with other like-minded entrepreneurs all over the world that are also trying to push their idea forward. And so I've always been seeing that learning in the community is actually key, because ideally the best way to fund something is to find a customer that values what you do, no matter whether you do a for-profit or not for-profit, actually. And so funding is important, but it usually comes when something is working already and you need to grow it.
Yeah, to definitely check if the whole idea is working out. And I think many, especially people who want to become entrepreneurs, who want to run a business or have a startup or watch any one of the usual funding shows on TV and just say, one day I will have an idea that will change everything, and I have exactly the product that I need to build that will be successful. But really finding out what works with the customer, and especially when it's like sustainable ideas, which are still needed and needed more than ever, there needs to be more work to put into it to have a solution that works and the business around it, and not only a solution that sounds good in your head, but no one will buy it. So what is like a tip that you can give to find out if what you're thinking about works?
So I think I can give 3 recommendations, right? The one is, first of all, follow your passion and try to relate your passion to a purpose, right? What is it that really drives you, that puts you in a state of flow? And what kind of issue can you address with what you're really passionate about, right? If you're passionate about, as you seem to be, media and podcasting and creative storytelling and whatnot, right? Do exactly as you're doing, try yourself out, but at the same time, maybe also find a way where you can solve a problem, right? Or offer a solution to a problem. So relating your passion to a purpose, I think is one first step that gives you the energy to be entrepreneurial, because being entrepreneurial comes with things that are going wrong, and that's totally normal. But you need sort of the resilience, you need the energy to make it through those difficult moments. And that's usually when you're really passionate about it and when you believe what you're doing is meaningful because it has a purpose. So that's the first one. The second one is to be humble. And that means to follow your gut when it comes to the idea that you have, but test it from the get-go. Don't just build a product or a service and stay in your 4 rooms and try to make it the most perfect everything that you could think about. But as soon as you possibly can, go out there, talk about it with lots of different people, and try to really validate whether what you have in mind is actually something that other people think of value as well. So the humbleness to get out there early. And lots of founders that I've met along the way sort of are concerned about IP and whether somebody will steal their idea. But especially in the early days, in 99% of the cases, it's all about you and making this happen. So the probability is that lots of other people around the world have similar ideas. And so it doesn't matter if you share them. The more you share them, the better, because it gives you the chance to actually get feedback. And feedback is what will get you to something that has product market fit. And last but not least, it is about building a community, especially today, right? You have so many opportunities to build from the get-go sort of a community in which your organization can develop. And that's much more fun and much more successful than if you go it alone.
Yeah. Thank you for sharing these. And listening to these, I can only suspect that the first tip really also applies to your own story in founding, or your both stories in founding the Do, in combining both the passion and providing a solution to a real problem. So maybe you can reflect how this affects your journey.
Sure. So I'm a serial entrepreneur, you would probably say. So, I had my first startups in university. I was studying all over the world, thanks to scholarships that I got. I was doing at the end a master's and started a PhD at Oxford. Had already 1-2 startups that didn't go so well. And then decided to actually not finish my doctorate and instead partner with a great entrepreneur to start a philanthropy, a foundation. And out of that, actually, one thing led to another, and I learned about a lot of things, and then started my next organization, and then the Do. And so, in my case, it wasn't that I had a master plan. And I started out and I went for it, but I was really curious. I tried different things. I was always driven by where I could have the biggest impact in life. And I realized that I really enjoyed being an entrepreneur and an innovator myself, and launching things myself instead of working in organizations that other people had started.
Yeah.
And so the Do came about, and it's really solving a problem that I believe, namely that our whole economy is changing so fast.
Yes.
And the world of business tends to be not good at dealing with change and leading change. And so the work that the organization does is really reinventing how an executive education university looks like, right? And helping great leaders and great companies to learn the skills and the mindset they need in order to change their businesses, lead their organizations, and be really competitive in a changing market. And the method that we use for that is exactly the same method that we also use for the programs for the young entrepreneurs, right? So that if I look at the end of the day, the impact that I want to have in the world, and that Catherine, my wife, wants to have in the world, then we're helping the current business leaders to sort of be more innovative and change faster. And we help the next generation of business leaders to actually start businesses that are meaningful, that are about green innovation, that are about social innovation, and the bits that really concern us all.
Yeah. To me, that sounds like something like a synergy. So you have both parts of the spectrum that you also not only support the young and going, but help these established corporates to be more adaptive to change, to lead and sort of play a role model position. If I imagine Mercedes-Benz being one of the main leaders when it comes to funding green innovation, I think this is sort of like a ripple, like a snowball effect. So if one big player starts to fund these things, I think a lot of change in the economy can happen, and other big players start to rethink their talent and their education ways to be a bit more practical instead of just trying to send all of the potential talents in a specific university to get them formed already to then just start at their company, is to rather enable young people to be more confident in their entrepreneurial abilities. I think it's something really unique.
Yeah, I think that's a fair summary. And, if we look at the world, there's about 1 billion young people hitting the workforce this decade. So by 2030, we already know that in many countries, especially in the global south, across Africa, across Southeast Asia, the estimate is sort of at least 150 million of these young people won't be absorbed by the labor markets, right? There just isn't going to be the jobs, no matter what degree they graduate with.
Yeah.
And at the same time, now we hear more and more experts saying that with AI developments, every second entry level job for white collar workers, so for you, for example, after university, might be going away. Right. So if that's really the case, and if you look at some of the recruitment platforms, so I just looked into some of the data yesterday, where in Europe about the sort of hiring in tech companies is down 70% from last year to this year. There is a real issue with how are you preparing yourself as a young person for your future. And one of the answers I strongly believe is being entrepreneurial, because it gives you the ability to be flexible, to be self-driven, to learn how to form an idea and turn it into action and make it a reality. And that doesn't mean that everybody now suddenly is going to become an entrepreneur. But I believe that it's great to try it out. And even if you decide for yourself that being an entrepreneur isn't your journey, then those skills and the mindset will help you greatly in whatever job or position you'll take on, because flexibility, resilience, the ability to change jobs and roles will be a reality for, I believe, every young person that's entering the job market.
Yeah, I can really 100% agree on this personally, because our study course, which is based on the Team Academy idea from Finland, sees this a bit similar, where we have like practical entrepreneurship based in teams, and we try out for ourselves instead of business administration, where we theoretically learn how business work. It does come with some shortcomings when it comes to stuff like legal or financial math. At least that is my personal experience. But we learn how to be adaptive, to try out, to have interviews, to see and fail different projects to see if any service works. And I think this is why I can definitely agree on the way that you see it. And the other thing is, we have more like a general playground for people who want to try and be more entrepreneurial in any kind of field. But sometimes you will need to have a more precise expertise in a field, because I can do pretty much anything, but I couldn't be working as an architect, or I couldn't be an engineer just because I want to. As an entrepreneur, you can do any kind of field, but you don't have, mostly don't have like a really niche specialization. And I think there needs to be more like a synergist effect, that you have someone who's like really good at something, but still has the entrepreneurial edge. Or how do you see it?
Yeah, so I think, if you're really passionate about the topic, I know people that from early on just had a deep passion, a deep talent, a deep understanding of one particular issue, and that's what drove them. And I think that is fantastic and fabulous. So it is still absolutely wonderful if you go deep into a particular issue. And at the same time, the reality is that knowledge is becoming more and more ubiquitous. So this means it's accessible everywhere, and more of so-called expert roles is going to be taken over by technology.
Yeah.
So this means the probability that you will learn one thing very deeply, maybe also as the university system wants you to, up to, as I said earlier, up to doing your doctorate or PhD, and spend then probably 15 years on a particular topic. and you will be able to work in particularly that topic for the rest of your life, is going to be slim. I don't think that that's what the future will look like for most people, right? So I do believe that if you're passionate about a topic, go for it, but at the same time, learn how to be flexible, learn how to be adapt, be curious about other things, because being able to shift, to find new dimensions, new perspectives on this topic, and new ways of working in it is going to be really key. If we look at everything that's will probably going to happen in the future of our labor markets and are already happening. So I think this idea of an expert career, also, when you used to go into a company, especially as a talent or a leader, somebody would hire you and you would say, this is how the next 10 years will probably look like. And we will invest and develop in you in these next 10 years in the following way. I don't see those conversations anymore. And when I talk to people leaders, so to HR professionals, they can't do this anymore because they don't know what the needs will be even in 5 years' time.
Yeah.
And so they really need their leaders to be flexible, adaptive, and able to absorb new information quickly and turn it into something that is valuable to the company.
Yeah, you're right. So we need to be both be able to adapt to the change and lead the change. So the skill set definitely shifted, and this is something that I've seen in various fields, that the skill set shifts from more hard skilled to learn more like the interpersonal skills, to be creative, to be critical, to be more these really soft skills based. And it makes you think, what do you really want to learn anymore? So what do we need to learn?
So there's, the World Economic Forum in Geneva publishes a top 10 skills list every year or every other year after asking lots and lots and lots of businesses all around the world and institutions and governments about what they consider to be the key skills. Sort of what we see in the last years is that there is, as you said, an absolute move towards what used to be called soft skills, right? Critical thinking, interpersonal communication, ability to be empathetic, resilience, winning over others, having the ability to actually problem solve on the spot. And then there's a couple of tech skills, right? Being curious about technology, being able to adapt with technology, learn about technology. And then there's still sort of the piece around analytical thinking. So if you then probably look on ChatGPT or so, then the number one skill that gets always used is critical thinking.
Yeah.
Right. So, and then the question is, how do you actually learn critical thinking? And I had the warden of my old college from Oxford over on our campus in Berlin recently, and he explained it by saying he thinks it's about close reading, which I like quite a bit. So this ability to learn how to really dissect something. So if you hear something, to be able to take it apart, look at it critically, and also try to reflect on whether you're just resonating with it because it's your opinion, or whether there's something to it and how it could be perceived from other perspectives, right? And if we look at social media, our information landscape, what's happening in the media landscape more generally, then obviously this is something that's really important because we're flooded by information with AI more and more.
Yeah.
And a lot of that information might or might not be true. So being able to think critically, reflect critically is certainly something that I believe is super important. And that's something we should even teach our kids already. But it is the interpersonal skills that help you to work with others, engage with others, shift and adopt that are becoming more and more important.
Yeah, definitely.
And then the question is, how do you learn them?
Yeah, how do you learn them? And I think addressing this is even more important than just being aware that these skills are shifting. And this goes out for both me and any, basically anyone, but also definitely the younger listeners, being the students, is not to be just aware that the skills are changing. That I think they know that the times are already here. They're like on the edge on change. They don't need to adapt to like a certain thing because they're living with it and they're adapting so fast. But really, like, for example, the critical thinking makes really a difference when you not only just see some piece of information and either you agree or you discard it. I think this is something like where your old language lessons, whether it's German or English, really comes into play and really like analyzing a text. And it seems dreadful, but if you can see where is this coming from, who is this addressing, what is the intonation, so what really makes something unique, and maybe you will find out by this way alone if a text, for example, is written by ChatGPT or a human. And it's not only like the M dashes, the infamous, that are get thrown away all the time by AI writing. But definitely all kinds of information makes sense. And I think this is something that I will keep in my mind, to look at the, what was the World Economic Forum skills, and then find, I will build a table. So here's the skill and here is a way how to learn it. And I think the translation really makes a difference. Of course, most of it will be learned by practical working and not addressing a specific skill. I think it's something that comes along the way, right?
Yes, so that's what a lot of education professionals are now trying to wrap their head around, right? So I have a very particular view, as you might imagine, when you look at the name of our organization, called the Do, and the learning part being the Do School. So the challenge is, if you want to learn how to build your empathy muscle, will it help you if you watch a couple of videos about empathy?
Probably not.
Probably not, right? So there is a big difference between knowledge and know-how, right? Knowledge is something that you can acquire through books and, listening to a podcast or listening to, or even watching a film sometimes, right? Whereas know-how is something that you need to build. It's basically a muscle you need to build. And that comes through, as you said, through practice, right? So this means if that's true, then the way we learn needs to change.
Yeah.
Right. So this means sitting at the university listening to a professor for 90 minutes for a lecture is how you can get information, but it's not how you build a skill.
Yeah.
And so skill building is about getting a bit of information, going out and applying it, reflecting on how you applied it and how you iterate it. And usually researchers say it takes about 6 months to form a new skill, right? Deeply form a new skill. And so if that's true, then again, what does this mean for our education systems? What does this mean for how our higher education systems? And ultimately, again, also for people who are on the job already, right? So we have this incredible situation that, again, according to research, 50% of the workforce need to learn new skills in order to remain relevant. That means every single employee, a whole bunch of millions in Germany, many more millions in Europe, right? If you scale that up. And the question is, how do you do that whilst people are also working at the same time? So it's a really difficult challenge, and I think a really important one if we think about developing our societies and also creating new opportunities for people who otherwise might maybe lose their jobs.
Yeah. So it's nothing that is just nice to have and being on top of the curve to kind of see the trend and adapt to the trend, but it's crucial to remain in this extremely fast changing transformation that we have. I mean, change is constant. The world is always changing. People are changing, technologies, but it's happened so in a pace that we are so challenged, I would say, to keep the pace, or we need to find something that we don't need to compete to what the technology could do better than we do, and then to find different things that humans uniquely can do better than technology.
Yes, and I still think it's true, that this question of will technology replace humans? I'm not a technologist. I think in certain ways the jobs will go away, but new jobs will develop, and it's more about how do people work with technology.
Yeah.
And what's the development there? But I think that the problem with the narrative that you said, it's probably something that for 20 years people have been saying, that there's lots of change and it's ever happening. And there's so much going on. And at the same time, people just live their lives, and a lot of things in our economy and day to day didn't really change, right? Fundamentally, even with the internet and all that. And I think the situation now is different after the last years of what's been happening. So if we look at Germany, for example, right? So with COVID, with the wars, with the energy transition, right? So there is this piece around, we know about our planetary boundaries. So that's really giving us a big challenge of how we adjust our societies and our economies. At the same time, technology is really shifting with AI.
Yeah.
And at the same time, the markets and globalization is really shifting due to politics, right? So that many organizations need to change their business model. And so it's really hard, because you're probably, even if you're really interested in this stuff, you're sitting somewhere as an older person, right? And you've been hearing about this for years. And ultimately, small things change, but not really the essential ones, maybe.
Yeah.
And now to say, well, there's really a sense of urgency because now the change is really fundamental, which I believe it is not that easy. And that's why I think that's a real opportunity for younger people, because they can jump straight into this and see where their opportunities are, and also where they might want to do things differently than maybe their parents' generation.
Yeah. This is super, super interesting to have like a little excursion. And this is why I think my generation, and I'm not the youngest, probably a lot of my fellow student colleagues are about 20, 21, and I just turned 26 2 months ago. And I think this, like being close to the millennia, and in reflection, I've seen so much change with technology alone. I mean, even media alone. So I grew up having like VHS cassettes, DVDs, music cassette, everything. I think I probably had seen the most, or at least speaking for my generation, the most technological changes in such a short time. That's really something that I've seen like in retrospective. And I talked to many who are my generation, and in like comparison to even 5 years then, and they grew up directly with smartphones. So this is such a short time, and there's even like a generational gap of just 5 years that they did not have cell phones that couldn't be swiped, or just had like no colors. You will be just satisfied with like saving numbers, so you need to type in. But I remember even landline phones, and this stuff that even people just a few years younger than I do did not have. So I really appreciate the time. Sorry for the rant here.
No, it's all good. I recently looked at a project that one of our teams did on storytelling, and looking at Generation Z and developing it with Gen Z. And what I found really interesting is how differently they tell stories and consume stories from me. And it's all about front loading. The key message is always comes at the beginning.
Yeah.
Much more about authenticity and sort of the narrator than it is about whether the reputation is there or not, right? And all the stuff that you're also displaying with your podcast. And what I found interesting, how I think that way of storytelling is now influencing all sorts of generations and other sort of other age groups. So if you look at, again, the world of work, we have for the first time, I think, 5 generations in the workplace at the same time. And if you look at sort of some of how social scientists define generations.
Yeah.
And I think Gen Z is actually having, or the youngest ones are having, really a profound impact in the way they're driving their narratives on social media, because everybody's on it, even the 60-year-olds, right? Mm-hmm. And so we're all learning and relearning how we tell stories to each other and how we share information. And now this is in a country that is really old, namely Germany. If I'm traveling and I'm living a big part of my year in other countries or other places due to the travels and the offices from work that are much younger, right? You have this even more prominently. And so I think there's also this piece around, it used to be that older generations are really influencing the next. I think we also, through the technological revolutions or the new bits, we're having a lot of younger people teaching us how to do things differently, which is quite cool.
Yeah, it totally makes sense and connects the dots here, and everything is connected. And because of the connection, and you're definitely right, we see a lot of older people being on their smartphones as much, and the old arguments that I used to hear, that the young generation is always doing X and Y. It's always the same. It's always the older generation being annoyed of the younger generation always being on their, I don't know, it was books. Then they never go outside. Then they're always on their, I don't know, PlayStation, and it's the phones. But in this day and age, it is really that you see anybody is on their smartphone, from, to be extreme, from 6 to 60, I don't know, or from 8 to 80. You can really see anyone is influenced by this. And I think the media, especially the media, is kind of more homogenized. So more people use the same platform. And it's not like the old people will still, or the older generation, to not be disrespectful in my language here, will still occasionally read a newspaper, but they will still be on their phones. And this, I think it's more really a chance, as you said, that we have all the generations and different experiences working together on, especially on social issues, on environmental issues. And I can see if my grandpa, who just is 84 years old and really lived through the post-war times, and this is a definitive difference in how he sees the world, and he's still keeping track on time and still involved with the media changing. Of course, he's not really using ChatGPT, but he's aware of it, and I think that's something really astonishing to me. But what I wanted to say is that he can bring the whole experiences that he lived through, that I can only just hear or read about, and to then drive societal change, especially when we think about far-right movements and stuff like that. It's something I couldn't replicate because I did not feel like he felt.
Yes, and I think now you're painting a very positive picture. There's obviously also the very pessimistic and scary picture that media and social media and the platforms are really dividing us. They're creating bubbles in which we're only listening to what we believe in already anyways, right? If you look at the social media strategies of the far-right movements and how successful they've been, if you look at how there were generational divides when it comes to Fridays for Future and the Green Movement or Last Generation and all that stuff. So, as always, I think you can be a half full, half empty kind of person. And I hope that especially your younger viewers are looking also a little bit optimistically into the future and into the opportunities that you guys have. I still think that we have to be extremely careful to say, how does all this advance in tech or on the media side, on social media, whatnot, not divide us further? but help us to actually continue to innovate our democracies, the way we're safeguarding a planet that is definitely on fire, the way we're thinking about inclusion of other people, right?
Yeah.
And how we're looking at the far right movements, not just in Germany, but across Europe. So there's lots of bits where you could also tell a really negative story out of technology. And I hope that there will be enough young people who are really looking at sort of the needs for solving problems and being together as one community and using tech for good.
Yeah, I think so too. And as I can see, the critical thinking really makes it here, and you can really get absorbed in these sort of bubbles and the confirmation bias, and everything you will come across will just prove your own opinion that you have already. But I learned to be a bit more distant when it comes to that. When I was a bit younger, I was probably more easily influenced by any kind of information. And I see this in younger people all the time. And I think it's totally normal to change opinions, to be rebellious at some point. But when you get a bit older and more grounded on what you really believe in, I think you will become more critical. And this is why the critical thinking is, I think critical always sounds so negative, but being critical just means not buying in so easily.
Yes, listen, there's a whole academic field in that, right? But it's ultimately the ability to think in a structured manner and take apart arguments and make your own mind of a topic or an issue that you hear something about. And I think being able to be independent in your thinking and making up your own mind sounds like a pretty good thing to me.
Yeah, that is a good way to frame it. Being an independent thinker sounds much more empowering than being a critical thinker.
There you go. We already rebranded a skill.
Yeah. So you need to be then critical to become an independent thinker. I think the language really does change how we see the world. And to have a sort of short excursion to your book, it is obvious that you're an optimist. So the title basically says 5 reasons why the world isn't falling down or breaking down. And so the current one. And I think optimism is really, if you're practical and really do want to change and do change something, then optimism is really the only way to address the change. Yeah.
Yes. So, the way I see it, I think there's so much bad news in the world. And there is bad news because there's very bad things happening.
Yeah.
But at the same time, there's also wonderful things happening, and it's much harder to hear about them and tell them to others because it can be so overwhelming if you look at just all the stuff that's going wrong.
Yeah.
And so what I'm really passionate about is to make sure that we're not forgetting that there is progress, that there's really courageous people that are doing amazing things, and that we also need to share those stories and those experiences because they will motivate us and empower us to also do great things.
Yeah.
And lots of different puzzle pieces make a movement, and a movement that is practical, as you said, about how to make hope happen and turn it into reality is something that I think we need more of.
Yeah, I definitely agree on that. So there's so many bad news, and on the contrary side, especially a few years ago, there was so much doomerism when it comes to environmental changes and climate change, that it sounds like it's unavoidable, and every little bit we do is like I don't know if this is a translation into English, like a drop on hot stone, so it instantly fumes away, and everything we do is not enough to stop it. And I think to frame that every bit we do, and you're totally right, as puzzle pieces, can do lead to change and will inspire others if we talk about positively instead of just, I don't know, discouraging anyone who tries to do something or say the problem is too big to solve. This is something that reduces the human to like a singular thing, but humanity is enormous societal structure. So any kind of change really begins when we are collaborating, when we're cooperating, and this is something that people will forget. They kind of over and underestimate what they can do as a single person versus then as a whole group or as a society as a whole.
Yeah, I think that's a good summary. I agree. And the first book that came out in English is called Our New World, and it's really looking at lots of different people that each are pushing forward really cool solutions.
Yeah.
In a way that everybody can be part of. And so I do believe that we all have the power to create a positive impact in our sphere of influence. Doesn't matter whether that's large or small, right? Nobody can foresee that at the beginning. But that we also, as much as we have the energy for it, it's also a responsibility to actually strive for that impact. And that's why I'm so passionate about supporting young entrepreneurs who are taking the risk to make something happen. And why I also believe that there's so much opportunity for leaders that have lots of influence currently in the system to do something that's good for them and others.
Yeah. To be more altruistic is, I don't know if I'll use it right here.
No, for me, it's not about altruism. For me, it's about really being entrepreneurial and enjoy new solutions to problems that concern us all, right? And if enough people chip in, nobody will be able to solve the climate crisis alone.
Yeah.
Right? And there's systemic problems that also are there, and that for which we need governments and coalitions and all that. But everybody can chip away at a tiny piece of the crisis, and if enough people are doing it, this will also have an impact.
Yeah, you're definitely right.
All of us have the power to do that.
Yeah. Yeah, you're also right on the systemic part. It's something that I've recently got into like systemic design. But even if you are not going to influence all or many players in like the systemic structure of leading change, at least if you can understand how these things or institution interact with each other, this is like a recommendation for me as far as I understood it. If you understand how these parts work together, it is easier to find a solution that will go hand in hand with others.
Yes, so what we definitely have in our curricula for all the entrepreneurs program is system thinking.
Yeah.
And looking at really fully understanding a problem that you're interested in. And the key phrase there's always, don't fall in love with your solution, fall in love with the problem.
Yeah.
Because your entrepreneurial solution might change over time, but if you're really passionate about the problem, and if you keep learning about it and exploring it, you will find really valuable ways in which you can support others to solve their problem. And that's what's going to create value.
Yeah, you're making me really curious about applying, because, of course, as I sound like I would know about many of the topics that are talked about in the curricula, but the main real difference that I'm humble enough to acknowledge is that the knowledge alone about these things don't matter. It is really about finding people who are on your side, who are willing to support you, to be honest with their feedback, and the practice and the whole experience in doing so. So this is just a reflective part for me, that it doesn't matter if I know some of the topics. It really doesn't lead to the change. It really needs to have the people, the connections, and to find then solutions to try them out. not only know about it, but it really sounds really, really cool. And I will ask my student colleague what I think she recently graduated from the Visioneers, and I will ask about her. It sounds really cool. And I'm really thankful that you're doing something like this. And I will get to your book. I don't know if I will read the English one or the German version of, what was it called again? Our New World? Yeah. Sounds great.
Exactly. Yeah, the application is open to everybody. I think below 29 years old. So check it out. Everybody out there, check it out. And I hope we can support as many cool young entrepreneurial people out there as possible.
Yeah, I will share it within my study course. There's lots of talented, young, going, hungry entrepreneurs waiting for societal changes, trying out, and some of these start studying just after school, so they're really on the edge to try out their first ever entrepreneurial ways and journeys and expeditions. Expedition is a cool thing that you're really on the way to discover something. And I think some more mentorship could definitely benefit some of them, including me. And yeah, is there anything that you could like recommend, or books? Obviously yours, it is so natural for an author to present their books. And I can say that at least the recent one I think is really, really cool. It's a light read. I can recommend it for more optimism. And yeah, what else is on your side?
You mean book recommendations?
Book recommendations, or any kind of thing for learning to do, or mindset.
I think there's so many great books out there. There's podcasts. Rutger Bregman had a moral ambition book coming out this year. Scott Galloway is doing a really cool podcast for young entrepreneurs. There's a great series if you're interested in the Harvard, sort of the whole Harvard open online learning programs, right? That's a great thing. There's so much information out there to inspire you, and then it's all about you to go out there and try something and make it happen and learn from that. Happy to send over a couple more book recommendations if that helps for the future.
Yeah, definitely would appreciate that. All right, Florian, thank you for taking the time. Was a pleasure. And maybe if the time goes by, we can do another episode. I really found this a lightweight, entertaining conversation, and I learned a lot. So thank you for taking the time, and see you next time.
My pleasure, Emil. Take care. All the best.
If you've enjoyed listening to my podcast, you can show support by following me and hit the bell to never miss out on my latest content. I'd appreciate a positive review too. You can find more of my content on www.emilruth.com. Thanks and bye for now.